Mike, that an employee that contracts COVID-19, that they automatically presume that they got it in the workplace, they obtained it in the workplace, and then places that burden on already fragile small employers to prove that did not. Again, we have found, and what we know to be the fact is that the workers' comp system is in place to help ensure that employees who do contract or do get ill on the job have the ability to make that claim, and the employer has a responsibility to, with the workers' comp process, to cover that liability as it happens. Workers can access that. But again, the linchpin of the workers' comp system we have is to have a mechanism determining if the claim is related to work. So what the governor has ordered is it basically removes this work connection standard, and it makes employers liable for claims that aren't work-related. And so what we ask is, as policymakers, and frankly, Mike, even if scientists these days can't tell us how far and wide the pandemic has spread, how long it'll be with us, how is it that they have these magical powers to conclude that the workplace was the source of the virus and the employer is now on the hook to pick up the tab? It's just absurd. It's a serious insult to mom and pops who are already on the ropes, and they may not even be here, as I said, in a month.
You mentioned a little bit earlier about the idea of independent contractors, and I'm thinking about folks like that who are I won't say paid by the day, but they just show up when work shows up. And then that can be, sometimes it's 2 days here, and sometimes it's 3 days here. And show business, of course, those things kind of come and go based upon what the needs are with the industry. And with that in mind, you're working for 5 or 6 different organizations at one point. How can you pinpoint where you might have contracted COVID-19? You're working for so many different groups. Secretary, where he was responsible for full-time and board commission appointments spanning more than state agencies, including business, transportation, and housing agencies. And he was selected by Governor Schwarzenegger to serve as Director of External Affairs. This is tuned in from Mount Wilson FM Broadcasters and Global Jazz Incorporated, and I say my guest is John Kabatek. John, as we think about all these things in regard to small business, it really can be quite frightening, and there is a slippery slope here that you're talking about that really, it seems like if you start to go off the cliff, there's no coming back, though, is there?
It's going to be tough.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough. You know, I think we are extremely heartened and inspired by so many small business owners who refuse to go off that cliff.
Yep.
You know, even if they find themselves slipping, they supported through the way. Because number one, I think many of them just need to provide for their families and their employees' families. Many of them just consider their employees to be their extended family. But, you know, it's inspiring to hear and see so many of these folks who have either used their businesses to get back to it. We saw with the wildfires, and we're seeing it with a lot of these disasters, even the recent wildfire businesses that are preparing meals for first responders and for the community. We had a distillery down in Raleigh that was an alcoholic distillery
Starfish. Right now, then.
So even though this might, on the surface, seem like, well, it's
Well, that's easy.
to do, it's no big deal, it's a major step that what the governor's talking about.
It's a major step, and it's a major onus on the small business owner, again, who now has to drop everything, has to stop applying for their, filling out their application for their forgiveness loan so they can actually have money that can come in the door so they can actually keep their door, keep their door open. So now actually to stop doing that, to hold back on sending off rioters who are destroying and looting their businesses, to now stop everything and now start to logically prove that the burden would it's very, very frustrating. We hope to continue to have dialogue with the governor.
Well, that's easy. Is that the small business dollars that come through the door from the customer, many of those dollars go to our local, state, and federal taxes. And guess what that means? Guess what? That means fire, public safety, police officers, not just those folks, but the health care, and the ministry and educators. That funding comes to and from small businesses. So as we're seeing the reopening happening, I think elected officials are getting excited because they know that those are dollars that will come back to their public coffers. But if small businesses You know what I mean?
burden like that money will dry up, and there's something to do with people
Small business owners are able to operate during the pandemic, and that obviously set a lot of them back, and as you say, many of them probably won't be able to come back altogether. And many aren't sure they'll be able to open again, period, be it this week, next week, or whenever. How are these employers and businesses expected to assume this huge new cost if everything goes through?
Well, yeah, it's going to be difficult. It's just very difficult new costs. And We to make matters worse, we're even seeing some legislation that's come down the pipe relative to the workers' comp thing that would actually even expand and extend the governor's order. There's one bill that, we're part of a coalition, I should also mention, the California Coalition of Workers' Comp Reform, that is actually working with a lot of other business groups, a lot of others out there who are basically saying, look, we can do a better way of fixing workers' comp. We've gotten some reforms. But one bill that we see actually already in play would create a permanent and broad presumption for all essential workers other than police and fire. So one of them wants to actually make this permanent, which is absurd. And then some of the others really want to actually expand the scope of benefits for folks even beyond what we would see as typical workers' comp benefits, such as housing and other costs. So I guess we just asked, Mike, when is enough enough? I think we have reached an Armageddon point here with Main Street. We ought to be helping people to create jobs. And, oh, by the way, put money back into our public coffers, and that's what small businesses do.
Trying to make sure that local businesses are taken care of is, of course, so important, as we've discussed, here on the show. It's the heartbeat of California. I think maybe at some point there has to be a moment where everyone has to understand the harm that this can do, although it might be well-intended, is going to just, end up causing much more havoc and much more problems for people in the state.
It is. And we plead with our leaders at every level to not forget about small business. I think that it's all too often, and especially in an election year like this, we get the pat on the back from many on both sides of the aisle.
Mm-hmm.
Necessarily picking on anyone in particular, but we hear it from a lot of folks at every level on both sides of the aisle that pat small business on the back and tell us we're the backbone of the economy, and they either go in the direction of the larger corporations and forget about the impact or benefits for small business, or more commonly in California, Mike, more commonly there's labor unions and the trial lawyer bar that are well funded, that a lot of, especially folks who support these kinds of policies, tend to go to. So it's like we're in the middle. We make up 99.2% of all the businesses and job creators in the state. And yet we have to be especially loud. And that's why NFIB is so proud of what we do. And we're proud to be part of this coalition with workers' comp to make sure that they don't forget, that they do know the livelihood of their own jobs. But also, most importantly, our state depends on Main Street and mom and pops.
One of the things that I'm a big proponent of is you have to open your mouth and say something. Oftentimes people might say to themselves, yeah, you know what, they ought to do that, and then they don't do a thing after because they just don't know what to do. So for the listeners of this radio program who either want to get inspired and help NFIB or contact the governor's office, what's the best step they should do to try to help things out?
Well, we appreciate that. I think the most important thing we can do, and we ask everybody who's either got a small business, works for a small business, knows a family member or friend, is join the NFIB. Our NFIB, National Federation of Independent Business, we're 15,000 members strong in California, but there are close to 4 million small businesses that exist in the state. We have proven a very valuable resource. I mean, we have had just within the past couple months telephone calls and access calls with many of the governor's team, but President Trump was on a call with us about 2 or 3 weeks ago, Vice President Pence. We've had SBA leaders, Kevin McCarthy, the House